This presentation is called The Claim Game, Navigating Cosmetic Marketing and Compliance. This presentation is I'm probably the most excited about because this is something that I love doing, is dealing with product claims and compliance. So it's kind of that mashup between marketing and compliance. Um, I am Heather Bustos, the managing partner of Bustos Law Group. And just before we get started, a little bit about Bustos Law Group. We are a full service FDA, FTC compliance firm. We work with companies all across the supply chain. That includes manufacturers, distributors, importers, brand owners. So, like I said, all across the supply chain. We provide services including label reviews, marketing reviews, registrations, GMP audits, uh, even for brand owners dealing with their contract manufacturers and agreements. So kind of a little bit of everything on the FDA side and FTC. And then hopefully you're never in trouble. But if that does happen, you can absolutely come to us. We deal with recalls. We deal with warning letters, all that good stuff. So we can definitely help on that front as well. I like to learn from 30,000 foot view all the way down. So I thought it would be important to kind of start all the way at the top. Why are claims important? So I've used this in a couple other presentations on claims, and I think it's a really good example of kind of these two competing perspectives. So we've got the consumer perspective, which is focused on helping consumers make informed decisions, building trust in product safety and effectiveness. It can tell your audience about the product's benefits and intended uses. That's a key word. Let's try to remember that word for later. And then influencing their purchasing decisions. That's really the goal with marketing any product, is you want them to purchase your product and you want to explain to them why they should. On the other side is the FDA FTC perspective, which is the regulatory side. This is the reason why claims are important to them. FTC and FDA want to make sure that claims are truthful and not misleading, that they prevent deceptive marketing, protecting the public health. This is another part of this course. I call it a course because I'm going to teach you a lot about claims and kind of how to craft them in a compliant way. But determining product classification, I think that if you really get down to it, the claim game tends to be focused on cosmetic versus drug. So and then finally, I would say it also can trigger regulatory oversight and enforcement. So if we're looking at these two competing sides of the coin, if we can bring them into harmony, it will foster trust, safety, and transparency. So when we're crafting claims, we want to think of the consumer perspective, which I think that's what most brands are focused on. But in addition, we also want to ensure that we're thinking through the regulatory perspective and keeping those two things in mind at all times so that we're meeting all of our goals. And at this point right now, consumers are becoming more and more educated on what products can do, how they're dangerous. Obviously, we've got TikTok that's constantly educating consumers, whether truthful or not, on products and how they should or shouldn't be marketed. So I think either way, these two sides are coming closer and closer together. All right. Next, we're going to ask what even is a claim. And you'd be surprised how many times I get this question because the question is like, how all encompassing is it? Well, I would say it's pretty broad. A claim is any statement or representation made about a product that communicates its benefits, effects, or qualities to consumers. Now, that's a pretty broad definition, but here I'm going to kind of fine tune it a little bit. So claims are made by the brand itself through the brand's mouthpiece, but also can include third parties. These are influencers or brand ambassadors, retailers or distributors, PR firms, affiliate marketers. All of those third parties can actually make claims on behalf of the brand. However, there obviously needs to be some connection between the two, right? It doesn't mean that a third party, an influencer, can make a comment about your brand and FDA is automatically going to regulate it. It has to be an influencer that you're closely associated with, that you're asking to make those comments, right? To promote your product. So there does need to be a connection. It's not like any of these people can just make a comment and it's going to be attributed to your brand as a claim. Now, where can claims appear? And this goes to the FDA's definition of labeling. Well, it can be packaging. So what we consider like traditional definition of labeling. So that outer packaging on the bottle or box or lipstick tube, social media. And I say here liking a post because I think that that's a really, it's something that people are very entertained by when I do these claims webinars, because there was actually a brand on the supplement side that got a warning letter from FDA and got into trouble because they liked a post on their Facebook page that a consumer made. So I guess the consumer was like, oh, this product cured my husband's allergies. And because the brand liked the post, FDA considered that to be a claim. So it's important to note that it can actually go outside of just, written claims, right? Or spoken claims. In addition, your website, promotional materials, so things that you're using to promote your products. And then, like I said, statements made by third parties associated with the company. I'm going to go back to that word that I told you to remember, which is intended use. So claims help FDA determine what the intended use of a product is. The intended use is seen from a certain perspective by FDA, but essentially, the only way that FDA can determine whether your product is actually a cosmetic or a drug is based on what that intended use is. And they can only gather that by the way the product shows up in the market, right? So as you see here, FDA can consider the following to determine intended use: claims on labeling, consumer perception, and product reputation. And also ingredients. So if you, for example, and I have had a client with a cosmetic toothpaste. So the toothpaste was intended only for whitening teeth. It didn't have any claims about like killing bacteria or germs that cause gingivitis, right? But if that toothpaste includes fluoride, which has therapeutic effects, FDA can consider it a drug. So those are some of the factors that FDA looks at in determining intended use. Your goal as a cosmetic brand is for FDA to consider your intended use cosmetic and not a drug. Because even if your product has all cosmetic ingredients, you're selling it under, what would be considered a cosmetic, let's say a moisturizer, you're selling it in Sephora as a cosmetic, right? It's checking all those boxes. If you're now making a claim that it treats eczema, FDA can automatically consider that product a drug, and now you are subject to drug requirements. So that's really where the importance of claims shows up, is when FDA gains a different intended use than what you are intending, right, to put out in the market. All right, next. We're gonna go back to the very high level. What is a cosmetic? The reason this is important when you're crafting claims is the way I kind of see it visually is you've got a chart and you've got cosmetic on one side, you've got drug on the other, and a line down the middle. You want your claims and the way you are marketing your product out in the world to fall on that cosmetic side as much as possible. You do not want to cross that line, right? But in order to determine whether it fits in that side, you have to know the definition of what is a cosmetic. So the spelling bee aficionado, I won a couple spelling bees back in elementary school, but it's because I love wordsmithing. I really enjoy understanding what words actually mean. I would say I like to go back to the definition. FDA's definition of a cosmetic is an article intended to be rubbed, poured, sprinkled, or sprayed on, introduced into, or otherwise applied to the human body for cleansing, beautifying, promoting attractiveness, or altering appearance. This is very important because you can see that they're focused on these external things, right? They're focused on appearance, attractiveness. They're not focusing on things that go deeper than skin deep, I guess is the way I would say it. Examples include skin moisturizers, perfumes, lipsticks, nail polishes, shampoos, hair dyes, deodorants without certain drug ingredients. Tattoo inks can be considered cosmetics as well. So these are just some examples of what FDA calls cosmetic. Things for odor are also cosmetic. So just to give you kind of, like I said, that high view. Now we've got to go to that other side of the chart, which is what is a drug? A drug is defined as articles intended for diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of diseases or conditions. And this is an important part, the reason I underline this, intended to affect the structure or function of the body. Now, most brands know that they cannot call out a disease or condition. They know that they cannot say this treats acne or treats eczema. However, the affect the structure or function of the body piece is where brands tend to have a little more trouble, right? So that's what we're going to get into in this presentation is, kind of where is that line drawn? So examples include of drugs that are kind of towing the line between drugs and cosmetics or combination drug cosmetic products, acne treatments, dandruff shampoos, sunscreens, or you could say skincare with sunscreens. Those are considered drugs. Anti-aging creams with therapeutic claims. Products, these are big products right now. I've seen a lot of, I've had a lot of clients in these areas that affect pigmentation or hair growth. I've also seen quite a few warning letters, enforcement actions against those types of products as well. So now we know what's a claim, what's a cosmetic, what's a drug. Now we're going to get into the agencies that regulate claims. So you can kind of understand what they're looking for, what they're looking at. So the FDA, their oversight of claims, and I'm going to go into FDA first and then FTC. They have joint jurisdiction, right, over product claims. So the FDA, governed by the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, their scope of oversight is labeling claims. It says on packaging and inserts. We already talked about kind of what that definition of labeling can extend to. Their focus is on product classification based on intended use, which we also talked about, and safety for cosmetics, which has created a higher level of scrutiny under MOCRA. Key requirements: claims must be truthful and not misleading. Products making therapeutic claims, so for example, treats acne, are classified as drugs. And then pre-market approval is required for drugs, not cosmetics. Although there are certain color additives that must be certified before they're used in a cosmetic formula. Here are some recent enforcement trends. These are important to note. So FDA, this is a big one. FDA is transitioning from soft enforcement, education around MOCRA, into formal enforcement. And we're just going to see that continuing. They, I think, have given industry some time to kind of get used to. I mean, imagine you're going from the 1938 Food, Drug, Cosmetic Act to MOCRA. It's a big jump. It's a big step for industry. Obviously, some of the bigger players have already done a lot of what's under MOCRA, but small to mid-sized businesses need some time to catch up. Also, cosmetic versus drug claim enforcement, that's not really new. That's just, it's going to keep going. It's ongoing all the time. And that's what you see most of in warning letters is a product that you can tell the brand wanted that to be a cosmetic, but they started making drug claims and FDA then considered it a drug. Next is private label accountability. This is a big one. Obviously, industry nowadays, it's so easy to just hire a contract manufacturer and private label cosmetics. FDA is onto this. Even if, this is a really, really important point, if I can save you some headache, I hope I can. Even if you own the brand and you do not have any physical custody over that product. Let's say you have a contract manufacturer that manufactures your stuff. You've got a 3PL that fulfills all your orders. you don't even take physical custody, you are still accountable for the compliance of that product. Okay, I cannot stress this enough. You need to have oversight on all of those third parties. You need to be responsible in terms of recalls, complaint handling, adverse event reporting, or at least if you're pushing that out to third parties, you need to have oversight on all that documentation. So this is just my little like aside that I have to push out there into the world. It's really, really important. Private label accountability, and FDA is wisening up to this. I had a client that took no physical custody. FDA met them at their kitchen table because they didn't even have a business address. Like they had nowhere that they were actually doing business other than out of their house. FDA met them, and the first thing they asked for is all the documentation on all those third parties. So if you don't already have that and you're a private labeler, brand owner, definitely start getting that prepared. And then also e-commerce enforcement. I did do a presentation recently. You can go back and look at it on LinkedIn. But basically, the e-commerce enforcement is relating to Amazon in particular. There's some other e-commerce, but obviously that's one of the biggest ones. Amazon, FDA has sent them a number of warning letters. And because of that, since FDA has been ramping up enforcement against them, they've now raised their standards in terms of regulatory. So that's important to know. Next, we're going to talk about FTC oversight of advertising claims. So they're governed by the FTC Act, and Section 5 prohibits deceptive practices. Essentially, they have oversight. Their scope is much more broad. So FDA, let's say in this case, it's cosmetics over consumer products. In this case, they can have oversight over advertising across all media, so TV, print, digital, social media, and it applies to, among other things, cosmetics, OTC drugs, supplements, health-related products. That's kind of the overlap of FTC, FDA, but they have jurisdiction over many other categories, just basically advertising in general. Key requirements. So the foundation, FTC's foundation, is that claims must be truthful and not misleading and backed by competent and reliable scientific evidence, right? So that's where your substantiation comes in. If I were to compare the FDA and the FTC side, I would say FDA, although they do require claims to be truthful and not misleading, they focus more on that category, right? Is the intended use, making sure that if the product is a cosmetic, you're not claiming that the product can do what a drug can do, right? Because then consumers will get the impression that, oh, I can stop using this drug, which is subject to higher levels of scrutiny, and I can just use this cosmetic instead. That's really where the issue can come in. Whereas on the FTC side, they're very focused on substantiation. Do you have the studies? Do you have, the rigorous data to support the claims that you're making? As with FDA, they don't have a pre-approval process. It's more on the post-market side where enforcement comes in. FTC's enforcement, as you'll see in another slide, is, I would say, a higher level than FDA's. So usually I would say they have a little bit more teeth than FDA, but I think you need to consider both sides when you're coming up with claims and marketing. Recent enforcement trends. Focus on influencer marketing. This is huge. They have a major focus on influencer marketing. And what we're seeing, which I think this was a recent NAD opinion, but this was a brand that essentially didn't necessarily have a direct contract with an influencer, but had enough of a connection with that influencer and had sent a free product to them that NAD said that there was enough to hold the brand liable for what the influencer had said. This is important to keep in mind, and making sure that you're keeping tabs on what third parties are saying about your products. Collaboration with FDA on overlapping jurisdiction. FDA and FTC have a memorandum of understanding. They have joint jurisdiction. They work together. You can get a double whammy from both. So like I said, it's important to look at both. And then finally, working with NAD as watchdog. So NAD, which I just mentioned, is a branch of the Better Business Bureau. It's called the National Advertising Division. They are not a government agency, but they are a third-party watchdog, essentially. If you receive a letter from NAD, I would take it just as seriously as getting something from FTC, because even though they're not a government agency, what they do, they have a very, very strong and educated legal department that will put together a case against you. And if you do not take it seriously, they will then gladly package that up and hand it over to FTC to now get involved. And FTC loves that, right? They put in all the legwork. So that's important to know. NAD, definitely, you need to take it seriously. All right. So now this is the enforcement side. So this is just kind of, I'm going to go through this quickly. These are some of the enforcement measures. Again, because these agencies don't pre-approve anything, they're not looking at it in advance, they do post-market enforcement. That's how they enforce. So on the FDA side, enforcement measures include warning letters, recalls, which now they can mandate under MOCRA for cosmetics, inspections and 483s. 483s are, what they issue after an inspection. They also have joint enforcement with state authorities. So sometimes you'll see, which I'm based in Texas, but I'll see where a client is working with FDA on something, and all of a sudden the state of Texas will jump in with similar issues, right? Because they have joint enforcement, import detentions and alerts, so they can hold product, they can detain product, they can they can refuse product, they can also place products companies on import alert. And then finally, this is kind of the ramping up, but they have the ability to seize product, file injunctions, and criminal persecution. On the FTC side, they can issue cease and desist orders, require corrective advertising, federal lawsuits, so file federal lawsuits, and seek monetary penalties. So that's a little bit about enforcement. I don't want to scare you, but I kind of hope you're a little bit scared by what can happen if you don't take this seriously, right? So that's the whole reason for doing this presentation, right? So we avoid any of these issues. All right, so here is a real world example. I have used this before in other webinars around claims. This is a skincare brand. They were started by a couple who, I believe they had a YouTube channel, were kind of like influencers. They started a natural skincare brand. And the reason I use them is not to show, that they necessarily were doing something wrong. It's also to use it as a hero story. I think that they took action and did the things that needed to be done, but I use it as a good example because the warning letter just has a lot of claims that I want you guys to look out for. So what claims did FDA cite? Using vegan stem cells, a new way for your skin to build collagen, repair itself, prevent aging, ideal for treating sunspots, age spots, acne scarring, hyperpigmentation, supports the synthesis of new skin fibers, sweet iris boosts cell regeneration, rosacea. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I can tell you there are brands in the market right now using a lot of these claims. And I'm going to tell you that you shouldn't be. These can be, and as you see in the next bullet, how did these affect the FDA's perspective on intended use? Well, you've got diseases or conditions, acne scarring, rosacea, hyperpigmentation. Those are all considered disease or condition. And then on the structure function side, boosts cell regeneration, builds collagen, supports synthesis of new skin fibers. These go too far over that line between cosmetic and drug. Now, the reason I call this a hero story is because not only did this company modify their claims to meet the FDA definition of cosmetics, which is absolutely what you should be doing if you're responding to a warning letter. If it's a website, you're in the best position, right? Because you can just take those claims down and then rebuild with compliant claims. Obviously with packaging, it's a little bit more tricky because, it's you'd have to reprint labels and stuff like that. But in this case, with a website, you can kind of just take it down and start from scratch. But what they also did is created a company-wide claims protocol. Once I found out about this protocol, which I actually found it, you can even find it online now. You can Google it. I think it's amazing. It basically breaks down not only for anyone inside the company, but even you can provide it to third parties that you're working with and let them know, hey, don't say this, say this, so that you keep them compliant, right? And that's really the goal here, is to make sure not only your internal people understand and know, but that they can, communicate that to third parties on your behalf. This is a service I offer to clients now. Once I found out about this claim protocol a few years ago, I now offer this service to clients, and I create claims protocols that say, hey, you're in the skincare business. These are the claims that people are likely to make about what your product can do. Here's some safer alternatives. And I think that's a great way to make sure everybody's on board and everybody understands the compliance side of claims. All right. So this is a little cheat sheet. I kind of took, so it's called Risky Moves versus Safer Alternatives. And I wanted to kind of highlight, again, I think most brands know you can't say eczema, you can't say acne, but I wanted to focus on claims that cross into structure function territory. And I wanted to use product types that are popular in the market right now, so you can get an idea of how these work, and maybe this helps you in your marketing as well. So first, anti-aging creams. One of the claims that crosses structure function territory, which we see in the market all the time, stimulates collagen production, restores skin elasticity. What I would prefer to see, a safer alternative, visibly firm skin. And you'll see a lot of this visibly, appearance, the look of. That's because we're sticking with that cosmetic definition of appearance, right? It's beautifying, it's cleansing, right? Wrinkle treatments eliminates wrinkles versus reduces the appearance of wrinkles. I always say this to people, the marketing person that must have been told the first time, like, we can't just say eliminates wrinkles, we have to say reduces the appearance of wrinkles, must have thrown up in their mouths a little bit, because it does not sound good from a marketing perspective, but it's necessary. And you can see why when you hear that in ads and you see that when people are describing what their products can do, there's a reason. It's because they're trying to stay within the bounds of what's allowed for a cosmetic. Firming lotions, rebuild skin structure, improves dermal density. No way. We want to talk about improving the look of skin firmness. And I know that this is in some ways, and I've dealt with many, many marketing teams. This is like putting you in handcuffs. Like, wait, you're telling me we can't say these things? The issue is, again, you are towing that line of becoming a drug product when you're making claims that way. There are other creative ways to do this, but these are just some examples. So I would just try to focus on appearance or things that are not affecting structure function. Hair growth serums, this is a big category. So on the no-no side, we'll say activates hair follicles, promotes new hair growth. Safer alternative, improves the appearance of thinning hair. Again, appearance. Cellulite creams, breaks down fat deposits, improves lymphatic drainage. Those are structure function, whereas smooths the appearance of cellulite is a safer alternative. Eye creams, reduces puffiness by improving microcirculation, even just reduces puffiness is structure function territory, whereas minimizes the look of under eye puffiness is different. Skin brighteners inhibits melanin production, alters pigmentation pathways, hyperpigmentation. I've seen quite a few warning letters on this. We definitely want to go with the safer alternative. Brightens skin tone, even skin tone, brightens complexion. Those are all better alternatives. And then finally, lip plumpers. An example of structure function, stimulates blood flow to increase lip volume. Safer alternative, enhances lip fullness visually. So if you want to take a quick screenshot of this chart, this gives you a great idea of kind of what is in structure function territory and in comparison, what a safer alternative would be. And I couldn't leave you without some key strategies to avoid regulatory trouble. We've talked about a few of these, but I'm just going to go through them very quickly. So, strategy, substantiate all your claims, making sure that you have scientific evidence, right? Making sure that you have studies, making sure that you're not saying clinically proven unless it meets that super high standard. If right now you are marketing your product as clinically proven and it has not gone through rigorous clinical trials, the formula itself, do not say clinically proven. Okay, this is not just a regulatory thing. This is a litigation thing too. This is a state level deceptive trade practices thing. So we want to be careful with that, making sure we have scientific evidence, that we're not making all out claims based on a consumer perception study. Not the same thing. Avoid structure function claim language. We already talked about that in the last slide, and some examples using appearance-based language. So improves the look of fine lines or enhances skin radiance. Next, maintaining safety documentation under MOCRA. Safety substantiation is required. I suggest you review that and determine if you have the substantiation you need, because again, FDA is trending in that direction of starting to enforce, in addition to adverse event tracking, labeling clearly and compliantly. So making sure your physical labels have the required contact info under MOCRA. Allergens, this is not enforced yet, but we're seeing that this is probably going to be coming soon. So keep that in mind. Professional use statements are required as well. We already talked about this, but monitoring your marketing channels. So influencer content, social media, digital ads, all of those things are considered labeling and are considered marketing from the brand's mouthpiece. So ensure that you have a tight grip on all of those platforms. I know it's hard because you've got your marketing team kind of doing their job, but they need to be keeping compliance into consideration. I have dealt with clients who have had social media platforms that have thousands and thousands of posts. Let me tell you, that is much harder to go back and try to update those things than to come from a foundation of compliance in advance as you're making content. So I would definitely recommend doing that. Train your teams on regulatory boundaries. Like I said, having a marketing claims protocol that you can pass around to everyone in your organization, making sure that marketing, R&D, legal are all aligned on the messaging. Please don't bring a consultant or a lawyer into the mix at the very end. Bring them in the beginning so that they can set that foundation and let you know, like, hey, these are the areas we need to stick in terms of marketing, and then let the marketing do their creative work. But if you've got a marketing team that doesn't think about compliance and tries to come up with all these creative ideas, and then your legal tells you can't do it, you're going to trash all that stuff. It's a waste of time. So bring in legal early in the process. And then finally, staying updated on FDA, FTC guidance. They do have email lists you can sign up for. You can sign up for our email list. We provide updates. We also have a blog. Or follow me on LinkedIn. You probably are if you're on this event. But just staying up to date with the updates. I will tell you, under the current administration, we've seen a ton of updates. Like, it's hard to even keep up lately. So I suggest you sign up for those updates now so you can stay, informed on what's going on. All right, so now this is the end of the presentation. Here's my contact information. You can reach out to me if you have any questions. That QR code will take you to our website where you can schedule a free consultation. We can chat if you have any questions about claims. If you want me to create a claims protocol, happy to do that as well. If you do have any questions, post them on LinkedIn and I'm happy to respond to those.